now for the Shop Report with
Barbershop Jay.
What up, sports fans? Welcome to the Shop Report. I'm Barbershop Jay. I'll be your host for the day. Here's what's happening. If you're up and around and you're out and about and you want to give us a shout, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. Once again, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. And as always, we'd like to remind you all the Shop Report is now being brought to you by none other than the fine folks over at Rocket Digital. If you find yourself in need of services such as social media advertising, media production, or marketing consulting, and a host of other digital services, hop on over to their Facebook page at RDM Detroit and tell them Jay from the shop sent you. Or you can check out their website, rocketdigital.net. That's ROCKITDIGITAL for all y'all out there that ain't got no hooked on phonics. My bad. Joining me on the program today is none other than my cat from the NYC, a.k.a. Rucker Park, Brother Rich. What's happening?
Brother, I'm always honored and humbled to be on this program. I tuned into the eager to hear the representative of the Cowboys speak to us about the social unrest and what Mr. Jones' position is on the social unrest. So I'm eager to be on the line with you today from Dallas. And I'm just always honored to be up on this program.
Yeah, thank you for that long soliloquy, Mr. Stephen A. Richard Stefanski. And on the other side of the ledger, we got my man, Joey James. Or should I say, my man from up north. My bad, Joey James, a.k.a. Double J. Tell the people what you say.
There's a few things in life that are promised.
Oh,
death,
boy.
taxes, Lil Jerry, and the kettle.
Wow, really? Oh, that's funny to you, huh, Brother Rich? Here we go already, right? Yeah, well, we start things off today, of course, discussing the current events that have taken place here, not even, 10 minutes, so to speak, after Mr. George Floyd's untimely passing. Here we go again, right? Yeah, here we go again. So, I'd like to mention, if I could, the headline that I read of a local newspaper here in Ohio. Actually, it's based in Akron, Ohio. It's called The Reporter. The headline for The Reporter reads, in big, bold, black letters, dark letters, the Trump administration to Black America. The coronavirus pandemic is your fault. And to that I say what? Now, before I come to you, Brother Rich and Double J, let me read on a little bit more, okay? The U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex M. Azar, and I mentioned this in a video I did a couple hours ago, but there are a few things that I didn't mention in the video that we're going to talk about here on the show today. But anyway, Alex M. Azar goes on CNN, I don't know if it was last week or week before last, but it wasn't that long ago, and says, and I quote, "The underlying health conditions of Americans, in particular in minority communities, contributed significantly to the death toll from the coronavirus." My question, why is it that with every major disease that has afflicted this country, the minority population, blacks especially, always seem to be the worst case scenarios? Brother Rich?
Well, it's systemic racism. This is the conversation that we're having with ourselves. Is America, and do we suffer from systemic racism? Now, when we talk about systemic racism, what are we talking about? We're talking about every area. When you talk about your system, the solar system, the body's immune system, when we talk about the systems of the body, the systems of America, America's educational system, her political system, her social system, her system of justice, jurisprudence, all of our systems are tainted with this thing called racism that's been identified. America's history is closed in racism. So why? Why is it like that? It's because America has never failed to address our oldest sin. The oldest sin on America's book is that in her founding, there was racism prevalent in our dealings with, in her dealings with the Native Americans and then black people out of Africa to build this nation that today has never reconciled the books on what is owed emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and yes, economically for the sin and the scourge that was and is the greatest crime against humanity, and that is racism.
You know what? And Double J, before you respond, let me give the definition here. The systemic versus systematic, so to speak, because there was some question as to which one is what and how is it different and so on and so forth. Systemic describes something that happens or exists throughout a whole system. It is the newer word. It entered English in the early 1800s. Systematic, describes something that was thorough and intentional, methodical, or implemented according to a plan. So there you have it. Double J, what say you?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to elaborate on that point is systematic would be the financial institutions giving lower approval rates for loans to those of color, regardless of their social class, so including your middle class African Americans, in comparison to their Caucasian counterparts. Systemic is the broader term that you can't put your finger on one thing because, unfortunately, just like that game that you would play at Dave and Buster's, where you got to touch the button when it lights up. There's simply that many. And so when we talk about something like this, and again, we're in 2020, and remember here, Ruby Bridges, that incident with her being, she's only in her 60s. So I think really I would call this the Great Awakening, because so many that this doesn't apply to it, so to speak, that they don't live with this day in and day out, are finally coming to terms and looking in the mirror rather than, turning away from it as they did for the better part of 20 or 30 years, if not longer. And so we're to be able to write that headline and not have fear for being employed the following day is actually part of the problem, because it's ignorance. Of course, you could easily make that claim when you look at the statistics, but why? It's the why behind it. If some of the things that even I just mentioned were to never take place, then you wouldn't have the same economic conditions if all things were constant with the melting pot that is America. And so when you read something like that, it just my blood boils, because it's intended to target a specific audience. And let's be realistic here. The newspaper is not intended for 18 to 24-year-olds.
Right.
It's a dying major media. And because of that, the only way you're going to sustain the targeted audience is by getting their attention. And even as disgusting and to take it into these means.
The other thing, good stuff too, fellas. The other thing that bothers me when it comes to things of this nature are the statistics, quote unquote. And I'll give you an example. Well, and I'll say this as well. I'm so glad that I took courses like sociology, for instance, when I was in college. And the thing that grabbed my attention the most is the study of, or case studies, right? They really emphasize case studies and how you go about conducting a case study, Let's use COVID, for instance. And if you follow the timeline of COVID, from when it first hit the States to what it is now and so on, in terms of the numbers, the various media outlets were, it went from African Americans or people of color, if you would, the percentages were low. Then all of a sudden, in less than the blink of an eye, all of a sudden, it's more prevalent or more prevalent or more rampant in the colored communities or the minority communities than any other community. And I'm saying to myself, my goodness. And the thing that really, really irked me was I would go to work and the people having a water cooler conversation, repeating and regurgitating these statistical numbers as if they're fact or whatnot. And I said, Jay, what you think? I said, consider the source. And I kept walking. And I say this, don't let the numbers fool you. And I'm going to throw in why I mentioned case studies. Anytime the machine wants to validate the minority being the worst off, they come up with an absurd statistic that's eye-popping to say the least. And here's what I mean. When you do a case study, if I want to say more Indian Americans or more African Americans have this, whatever this is, whatever affliction it is, then when I go to do that case study, if I go to a place where I know 10 people have that and those 10 people are that minority, well, that's just a small sample size. But I come back and write my story and say, yeah, well, 100% or 69% of the population has such and such, such and such. You didn't broaden when you were doing your findings. You didn't broaden. You were selective, and you put that out there. And then you got people who don't think for themselves. They go along saying, oh my gosh, 42% of minorities have this disease or have that disease. That's because whoever put that information together, which is why I say consider the source, they only went to a specific or were selective in who they went to gather those numbers. So you have to do a case study on your own, so to speak. And I want to mention what Avery Bradley said, but I'll get to it in a second. To just further drive home the point about why you should do your own studies, if you would, bear with me. I'm going to pull up here an example, a real life example. Okay, well, let me ask this question: are you all Double J, Brother Rich? You're familiar with Rebecca? What's her name? Rebecca Jones.
I'm not.
You're not? Who said I'm not, Brother Rich?
I'm not.
Okay.
I am not. I am not.
Okay. Are you Double J? You familiar with Rebecca Jones?
I am.
Okay. Okay. Check this out, Brother Rich. Give me a second here. I got an Android phone. It's loading. Okay. Rebecca Jones is a former Florida data official. She created her own COVID-19 site, and her site showed more cases than the state reports. Check this out. And I won't read the whole thing, but just to give you some idea, to drive home what I mean about case studies, and folks need to consider the source when they just gathering stuff up from TV and the internet and so on and so forth. The data official behind Florida's COVID-19 dashboard says she has launched her own dashboard after being removed from the state's project. I wonder why. Rebecca Jones was removed from the state's scrutinized dashboard project after she questioned other officials' commitment to accessibility and transparency. Her website, FloridaCOVIDaction.com, is paid for entirely by donations. Florida deserves a community-based dashboard that doesn't hide or fudge numbers, the page says. And I'll just stop right there. You all can go to CNN and check out and read the article in its entirety or whatnot. The point is, now she was in a position to be able to do, she knows specifically how to do her own. And as a common man or whatnot, I couldn't tell you what you would have to do to really get closer to the numbers or to find out how accurate the numbers are and so on and so forth. All I'm saying to people is don't be so ready to repeat what you done heard somebody else say. Please, do your own. However you got to go about doing it, do your own fact checking and stop just accepting the fact that whatever they said is what is. That's all I'm saying. Brother Rich, in your estimation, when it comes to the numbers and statistics, why do they overinflate the numbers in regards to one select culture or group as opposed to another?
Well, I think that there's a whole history behind that. Certainly, who Hollywood and culture chooses to focus on as the poor immigrant, the criminal in the script, the quote unquote proverbial bad guy. That's been the history of what we've gone through as a country and what we've experienced as a country. But look at this. There's also this. There is an understanding that in media, let's lead with blood and guts. Whatever we can make cruel, whatever we can make, whatever the worst thing is, somebody just had their whole family murdered. Let's put a camera right in that grieving mother's face as she walked in and found her children and her husband slaughtered. Let's find out, how do you really feel, ma'am? Not because we really care about her, because it'll sell some papers, it'll sell some newspapers, and CNN's ratings will be up because there was a school shooting, and let's interview the parents while they frantically look for their children. So unfortunately, this kind of terrible, scurrilous, low-down, low-grade fever media frenzy that we have for this kind of filth and degeneracy is part and parcel of the American landscape, and this goes across all race, color, creed, and unfortunately class, because they'll take a rich person and show them in a poor situation, a terrible situation, just like they will a poor person, if it will sell some newspapers and if it'll get some eyeballs looking in on their show.
Yeah, absolutely. Double J, what say you?
Well, again, we have to remember that there is a deeper root to all of this. And, you know, the same way that we make billions of dollars, and not me or you or I, but we as a country make billions of dollars off of conflict, is the same way that division and versus uniformity can simply follow suit with that theory there. And so when you hear a story like this and you understand it's entirely factual, there's already a lot of division when it comes to where we are as a country presently, but even more so when it comes to the virus as a whole. You have a lot of people that have very, very different opinions on it. And so that's why it's significantly important to have folks like this that are not only willing to walk away from whatever it was they were doing, but continue to fight for the truth. And so looking at what she's done, I've looked at the dashboard right now on a just to fill in the audience, you know, prior healthcare, which maybe come as a surprise to many, is one of the late adopters to AI and just technology as a whole. And so
that's interesting.
Being able to understand, I think today, that the data can be manipulated, no different than the gentleman with his headline in the article in Akron, is important for everyone to understand, regardless of where you're sitting on the fence, because ultimately you're just a statistic to them. Regardless of which bucket you fall in, you are still a crab. But the more information that you know is going to better prepare yourself on how to approach this situation. So I definitely want to give this young lady all the credit for doing what she's done and continuing to do so. And hopefully here we'll see something similar nationally.
Good stuff, man. If you're up and around, you're out and about, and you want to give us a shout, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. Once again, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. The Shop Report is powered by none other than Rocket Digital, your one-stop shop for all of your digital or marketing digital needs. Did I say that right? Who knows? Senior moments, baby. All right, let's talk Black Lives Matter. There are a few things that I wrote down under this header, if you would, that I'd like to get to. I'd like to point out. One of them, of course, being former Saturday Night Live star Jay Farrell shared security footage of a cop with his knee on his neck. LAPD, of course. You can go to people.com to read the article there in detail and find out what he said in regards to his encounter. But one of the things I pulled from it, of course, was he said I could have easily been Mr. Floyd. He said, thank goodness I'm here to be able to tell you all about it, but that doesn't mean that the experience was not surreal somewhat. Now, surreal is the word I put in, okay? And then we all know here the story of Rashard Brooks, whose death was ruled a homicide, as it should be. But the part that really, really bothers me, this dude was shot in the back because he pointed a taser at the officer. And you knew it was a taser. It's not that it was a gun, because, in a lot of these cases, it's always, we thought he had a gun. It would have looked like a gun. Well, you knew what it was because he took it from you. You knew it was a taser. And you still shot him in the back? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we both, all three of us here, have watched enough Westerns to know that even back then in the Wild Wild West, where gunplay was the order of the day, we've seen enough Westerns to know off the rip that you don't shoot a man in the back. They call you a yellow belly coward, something a gun, if you shot a man in the back. Okay? But my thing is, what was so heinous? The guy was drunk. Whatever it is, it didn't warrant shooting him in the back. But again, here we are, we're not even 10 minutes away from what happened to Mr. Floyd. And this Rashard Brooks case is not the only case that didn't happen in the last 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, maybe 72 hours. Hey, look, man, it's getting to a point where you can't argue with nobody about defending themselves. Because there's been some questioning from folks on Facebook in the timeline about, well, why was he running and why was he? I'm going to tell you why. Because it ran through his mind, his encounter with them. Oh, my goodness. I'd rather do something than to not do nothing and again, I'm not knocking anybody that tried to do the right thing, if you would, but I'm not going to be a sitting duck. That's what was going on in this man's mind. That's why he took off running. But to shoot him in the back? And then Mitch McConnell. I didn't even notice till a couple of days ago. He said this last year. We paid for the sin of slavery by electing Obama? Are you kidding me? A Freudian slip of epic proportions, no doubt. Absolutely. Definitely. So in other words, we paid for the sin of slavery by having an inept black man as president? Y'all got to be kidding me, man. Once again, I asked the question, what am I supposed to tell my sons? What am I supposed to tell them when I'm preparing them for this world that they about to be living in? I not showed them how to do math, how to write letters, English letters, words, things. I could show them how to do the dishes, how to do chores, how to cut the grass, how to wash a car, all those things, by all means. But how am I supposed to prepare them for a traffic stop? I don't even know what to say. I can't even say, well, make sure your hands is up. Because, we all know the case that happened, a year ago, 2 years ago? The man who was was a caretaker for the young man who was, I don't want to say autistic, but he had some sort of something was going on. Forgive me for not remembering correctly. But he had his hands up laying on the ground. They still shot and killed him. Come on, man. Y'all trying to act like folks ain't people. But then if I retaliate or if I respond to your aggressiveness or to your disrespect, and I'm trying to be nice here, you see what I'm saying? Actually, you violating. Whatever happened to give me 3 feet, man, 6 feet? Give me some space. You violating my space, and I ain't supposed to do nothing. And when I do whatever the law says I should do, I still get done in. So help me to understand this now. So at what point, when you're in an encounter, do this fight or flight risk thing, where do that come into play? Somebody help me understand. We got D. Gully from the Seal Lumbus joining us. Gully, what's the deal?
Everything, man. I just wanted to hear you speak on it again and again, man. It's you know me, it's usually hard for me, or not hard for me, to come up with words or to speak on something, because I usually am fairly composed on what I want to say. But this is so big and so heavy, bro. I'm still gathering myself, even up until this
Understandable.
hour, even up until now, still gathering myself on how it is I like to speak on the frustrations that I have, that a lot of you all have.
Understandable. And again, it's unfortunate, but the world we live in, man, it will not allow me to be kind to my brethren. And when I say my brethren, I mean those who are human. Now, I won't say it won't allow me. Let me retract that. I'll say I do my best to be kind to anybody and everybody. You know my motto, character first. But it's just unfortunate the world I live in they got a different take on things. They forcing my hand. What's that whole deal about, playing the hand that you dealt? Hey, if this is a game, I'm in the game. I got to play the hand that I'm dealt. So, Double J, we come to you in regards to Jay Farrell. Your thoughts?
Jay, there's no real easy way to say this other than the game you're playing is checkers and the game they're playing is chess.
Yes, that's simple. Which is why I say to everybody and anybody that's listening, you all need to start reading. And in particular, I'm going to recommend these 3 books like I keep recommending these 3 books to anybody and everybody that I come across. The Art of War, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and Brainwashed. Now, any one of them 3, y'all can come have a conversation with me. Y'all want to have a real conversation? A real conversation? Read one of them 3. Read all 3 and then come see me. And we can have a for real conversation. Brother Rich, your thoughts on the Jay Farrell situation?
On the which one, sir?
The Jay Farrell, the Saturday Night Live guy. Yeah.
Well, again, he's speaking. You're talking about the comment you referred to just now, that particular comment?
Yeah, well, when he showed the security footage, I was pointing out the fact that, like most Def, what I read a couple of weeks ago, how here it is, we got a TV star, but still he got a knee in his neck. The footage of the cop.
Correct, because what they're showing us, and this is why what I was going to say. I wanted to know what specific thing you were talking about with that, because what he's showing us, what Kyrie Irving is saying, and what Avery Bradley is saying, and what Dwight Howard, intrinsically enough, is saying along with them. There are more important things to deal with right now than sports. We have to deal with this because, as I said to, believe it or not, a friend of mine that's a police officer, the same thing I was saying to him, that you all cannot expect us to respect you. What do we tell our children now? We are seeing on TV that if we obey you, you're going to kill us. If we disobey you, you're going to kill us. I said, that's why that brother's running in Georgia, because he's fearing for his life. He wake up out of his sleep and the police is over him. We know the climate right now. I said, so when we see the police, the automatic understanding is this is our enemy. Because this is the way you all conduct yourself as it relates to Black American men in particular. This is how you treat us. That when you walk up on us, so he said, what do you tell your children? I said, you know what we tell our children. We tell our children, F the police, because the police they are our enemies and we have to be careful. They are not our friends. So he says to me, have you had a good interaction with the police? I said, yes. But the unfortunate thing is we've had too many bad interactions with the police, so all police are suspects. And now these people, like the players, they know they're just a suspect to be run over by police, have their knee put on the neck. Because remember now, George Floyd, it was the companion and good friend of
Stephen Jackson,
NBA player.
Right.
He could have easily just been with Stephen Jackson the same day. Stephen Jackson is just as big. So you got a big, quote-unquote, proverbial black man fitting all the stereotypes that we've been warned to stay away from, that is the most dangerous in society. So at any NBA player, any football player, they could be suspect. They could be subjected to that. Martellus Bennett and his brother, one of them had a terrible experience in Vegas where they had an experience with the police holding a gun at them.
Yeah.
These players are understanding that they are not exempt from being a regular John on the street that can be pulled over, harassed under the cover of law, and if necessarily, if the police officer in a bad mood that day, murdered. Absolutely, we need to be doing something about it. And all of them, you'll hear more speaking about it now.
Yeah.
And that's why most people knew that Colin Kaepernick was right. Colin Kaepernick was telling the truth. He was speaking the truth. We were just too cowardly to stand up with him.
Mm. And you know what, Gully, before you weigh in, I'm going to read Avery Bradley's comments, actually. The actual act of sitting out doesn't directly fight systemic racism, but it does highlight the reality. Let me repeat that, the reality that without black athletes, the NBA wouldn't be what it is today. The league has a responsibility to our communities in helping to empower us, just as we have made the NBA brand strong. But to the Jay Farrell point, Gully, go ahead and say what you say. You there?
You talked to Gully, right?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. I still got him on the line here. All right, well, Double J, what say you to what I just read about Avery Bradley?
He's absolutely right. It's something that, I personally had mentioned a few weeks ago now, which is shameful, that it's taking the players to have to directly call them out. And in some respects, though, I'm glad that they've chosen, and not just them within the NBA, but also within the NFL, and even as you saw with Chuba Hubbard at Oklahoma State, you're seeing it with high school prospects looking different directions at this, our alternatives rather, because we've reached this point in society that those that understand their value and have a platform to speak on and have some form of influence are really taking advantage of it in the best way possible. Because what this does is not only it keeps the highlight and attention or spotlight rather on the topic, but it pushes those that are so grateful for what they do for them by the form of lining their pockets to really pick a side here. Again, look to the length, the measures the NFL took when it came to Cap and Eric Reed and others.
Absolutely.
Just a few years ago. And they've done a complete 180 to the point where I'm hearing now that he may get signed by multiple teams.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me see. Here's the thing, too, though. Let me say this. Let me throw this out here. If you're Colin Kaepernick, do you even want to play now, really, at this point? Is it counterproductive if he's on a team?
It would never be counterproductive, Jay, because, again, it puts him back in a prominent position week in and week out. So it can't do any harm there.
But what happens if
course, depending on his own, it would come down to his love for the game, truthfully, because he has nothing to prove to any of us. At this point, he stood up for what he believed in. And again, just given the unfortunate nature and circumstances that took place to George Floyd, it became, you couldn't speak against what he was doing at that point. It ties into what Baker Mayfield and J.J. Watt have said, that people are missing the point if it, and to look into the origin and I, why I actually love that not only it came from them, J.J. Watt is somebody that you generally see running out on the field with the flag.
Exactly.
Baker Mayfield, of course, he's always going to be outspoken. He's always going to be himself, and he's never cared about the backlash for that, and he's never shied away from it either. But being able to get people to dig deeper, to not just look at this stuff on the surface, and that's by challenging people, that's really the step that's been missed. Most of us, as you even encouraged throughout this program, you've encouraged people to read. It's about taking a secondary action here.
Yeah.
That it's no longer just saying yes or no and moving on. And so from the ownership standpoint, I get it. Sure, there's a pandemic that's still taking place, and they need to, really, consider what they're going to do for next season, et cetera. But, they have teams for that. When it comes to doing the right thing on the social level, especially given the fan base and who their targeted audience is, if they hesitate any further than they already have, then I totally side with the players that, again, there's nothing, they have enough money. I've said it before that, if they wanted to start a league tomorrow and play just like they were planning on doing in Orlando anyway, if they want, they don't need big arenas and venues. They could form, they have the buying power with Maverick Carter and those guys being able to form agreements with networks. They would be able to launch a league. This is not the NFL. They would be able to launch a league tomorrow. And they would have enough people that would walk away from the NBA. So they really do need to take a hard look in that mirror that I told you that most have turned away from in the past, and understand that your silence speaks volumes, which is something that you mentioned in the previous question as well. So that, to me, it does not matter what industry you're in. It's on video games. EA Sports has it for Madden. So the fact that these owners feel compelled enough that they want to sit on the fence about this, who are you worried about is the better question. Call them out. They're the ones with the issues. Don't stay quiet. You should be challenging every single one that it doesn't agree with that stance about human rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you are part of the problem, and I will continue to reemphasize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brother Rich, do you think that, let's say, do you think Colin wants to get back in the NFL? And if he does, I'm to Double J's point, I'm feeling that all day, but let's say he struggles. I mean, it's just folks just sitting they just waiting for him to get in and then struggle. And if he struggles, not only struggles, but if he struggles mightily, then what?
Well, it doesn't hurt his cause, and I think that he would want to play in the NFL because there's only one NFL, and he struggled his whole life to make it there, and to be denied the opportunity to perform at the highest level, to showcase his skill set, is something he was denied, not because he could not perform, and he was never given the opportunity. So just to be given an opportunity to perform on that stage again, I think is a victory. He's already won. This is just icing on the proverbial cake, if you will, and I think it's wonderful for him and for the league and for the movement if and when he gets another chance to play. And I would hope that he would get an opportunity and he does showcase his skills. And even if he were not to succeed, well, that happens every day in the NFL, that people come in and try to make a quote-unquote comeback and they fail. But the fact that he's able to get back to that platform to again be afforded an opportunity would in itself be a victory. So I think that would be a good thing.
Okay. Gully, what about you? Do you think Colin wants to play in the NFL again? And to the same thing that I asked Brother Rich, if he was to struggle, then what?
I had a dream that I was on Jeopardy, and it was a $2,000 question. And the question was, Jeopardy is always, the answer is given. And there was a question. The question was, this form of argument is an informal fallacy of having the impression of refuting an argument. An example of which was kneeling for the flag in Colin Kaepernick's protest. And the answer is, what is a straw man argument? The point is, the flag was the quintessential example of a straw man argument, because Colin Kaepernick's protest was about the very thing we just saw and we keep seeing replay over again in the national media, between what happened Friday and George Floyd. and Breonna Taylor and countless others now. Colin Kaepernick coming back to play, his struggle will be another straw man argument to distract from what exactly he set out so long for, and probably atrophied, let's say, in terms of his ability, in terms of the speed of the game, anything that would keep him from otherwise competing and excelling very well. Kyrie Irving and Dwight Howard wanting to protest or wanting to sit out for this remainder of the season is the same reason perhaps why Colin Kaepernick abstained from wanting to get in the NFL, because they see a bigger issue. I say all that to say this. If Colin Kaepernick comes back, I hope he comes back because his mind wants to, and his passion wants to play in the NFL. I hope he does not want to come back for anything other than that, because his struggle will be magnified, will be another beautiful distraction from the issue that he brought to the forefront by intersecting sports and pop culture and our culture at that one time by kneeling. I don't want him to distract from his message at all by coming back if he's not mentally ready for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, me personally, I mean, I would want to see him play again, but this is bigger than that. You know, before we came on the air here, I told Brother Rich and Double J, I mean, I'm a big sports head. That goes without saying. But where I am today in my feeling in regards to sport in this country pales in comparison to what it was a year ago. Now, I can still, fire up the engine, put some logs on the fire, if you would, when it comes to talking about it. But I see my sons every day. And that trumps football, basketball, and baseball and boxing to me. But that's just me talking. I mentioned this to a couple of other people, and it was a jaw drop. They was like, "You? Of all people?" Yeah, me. Yeah, me. Because what I see forthcoming, and I'm not going to go into the, no long, drawn-out details, but I don't know, man. I just got a feeling, man, that all of this is getting ready to be irrelevant. But again, that's just me. If you're up and around, you're out and about, and you want to give us a shout, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. Once again, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. And as always, we are powered by Rocket Digital, like the cats over at RDM Detroit. Check them out and tell them Jay sent you. This next one is about, and the way I titled it, I'm sitting here looking at it, and I maybe shouldn't have said it. The hate is it's too strong a word. I don't like that word. But at the time, I just wrote what I was feeling. Why I have a strong disdain for Ohio. Ohioans get at me constantly for a few reasons. On the sports side, because I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. On the flip side, because they say I'm so anti-Ohio. You live here, you live there, you grew up here, and you all ain't got nothing good to say about it, because I'm cognizant of the politics. First and foremost, that once I understood left from right are like a cancer in this state. The lawmakers here in Ohio rejected a ban on the Confederate flag. But those same lawmakers passed a bill on keeping bars open till 4 a.m. And let me give you a little bit of background on the Confederate flag, if you would. That same flag that William T. Thompson so boldly pronounced, and I quote, "As a people, we are fighting to maintain the heaven-ordained supremacy of the white man over the inferior or colored race. And as a national emblem, it is significant of our higher cause, the cause of the superior race." And to that I say, this is the same ideology, prevalent today when it comes to the American flag and those who took issue with Kaepernick for kneeling during the anthem. suggesting and saying he was disrespecting the flag and our military. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Cap, why is there hardly any mention of Nate Boyer, who suggested Colin kneel in the first place, not to protest the flag, but to protest police brutality and the cancer that is social injustice? Not only did Boyer say he's surprised at the backlash it drew, but again, this man is a former Army Green Beret. So what? Cap was disrespecting him too? I'm telling you about the folks and their hypocrisy in this country and the hypocrisy I see on a daily basis where I work at and all points in between. They are unapologetic in their hatred. And I'm telling you right now, y'all clueless to the fact that y'all walking oxymorons. So now let's back up a bit. You understand? And not only are we going to discuss Ohio and their confederacy and so on and so forth, but we're going to make mention of what Mitch McConnell said. Brother Rich, the floor is yours.
Jay,
I'm here.
I don't know where you want me to start with this because, again, this is not new. We're in America. We've lived this. We've seen this. We've experienced this.
Yeah.
If it were not for technology, this story is not new. This story is your father's story, your grandfather's story. This is how your parents got to Ohio. How my parents. This is the reality of our lives. This is what my father had to tell me, and your father had to tell you, and your uncles had to be aware of, and my children have to be, and your sons have. And this is what we have to deal with. So today, what do we say except that here are our multi-millionaire athletes. They have an opportunity to address social, systemic changes. They can make change now. They can say, we will not entertain you in an hour where you want to be entertained rather than make real hard decisions and make real changes and look at what we've inherited and how can we make it better for all people going forward. And unfortunately, those are uncomfortable conversations that are we really ready to have them? And as a country, we are being forced into having them, but we're not really ready to have them. And so Kyrie Irving is one of the people who's been mocked and scorned and ridiculed because as an intelligent African-American male who doesn't want to play along with the status quo, he chooses to go his own direction. Kevin Durant chooses to go his own direction. And so now these young men are they have their voice and they're choosing to use it for something else. We got to listen. The world has to listen. The world has to pay attention because, as you said, the history of America is that they have always preferred that the African-American, the black, stay in the lesser position. Well, that time has come now. Well, we've seen that the contributions to society are such that we can no longer overlook them. America must come to a fair and equitable distribution of her resources. We must balance this economy to properly reflect the contributions of all of our citizens and not just a few. Not just a few.
I'm with you on that. Gully, what say you? Oh my goodness, man! I can't afford. You there?
My apologies here. I'm having significant technical difficulties. I'm addressing those. But what I wanted to say to this is that I'm glad again that we do have athletes like a Kyrie Irving that do want to actively bring attention where it is due on making people stop and not getting people so quickly back to distracting themselves from things that need to be taken care of, things that need to be addressed, how we see one another, how we as black people see one another. As far as the flag, I am so confused by that law that Ohio refused to enact because of Ohio being a northern state, being a state with a significant part in the Underground Railroad. all these many years later, enacting or failing to act on something that in effect preserves the longevity of a Confederate flag being used as a symbol of pride, as a symbol of reverence. Um, if this had been a southern state like a Mississippi or an Alabama or a Georgia, something like that would make sense. But Ohio, a northern state, part of the Union historically, upholding something that allows that flag to still be flown high and proud. Like I never understood. Like I see going in my travels. I'm in Central Ohio, so I'm Central Ohio. Columbus is as much rural, if not more rural than this urban. I see so many American and Confederate flags in the same yard. Flying right side by side to each other, and the oxymoronic nature of it is too strong that I can't ignore, and I can't help but shake my head, even though I should be used to it already. I'll never understand it, but this is why Kyrie and those guys probably are sitting out and refusing, to play until we get somebody with the power that could help change the course of how we see each other or how we see black minorities in this country. They're using their power for that, and I'm glad for it. I really am.
Yeah, so am I. Double J, what say you about the flag in Ohio?
Down on Gully's point here, because let's look at the facts. When Brother Rich pointed out a moment ago that story that's been passed down, that unfortunate story and conversations that you have to have, it was no different for myself. It was pain. The amount of pain I felt, hearing him say that, because it resonated with a similar story that was told to me. Watching my own dad's reaction to seeing that same flag, and hearing that those that are in charge that we've elected to be in charge to make the right decisions are still proving time and time again that they're not capable of doing so. Additionally, as Gully pointed out, it doesn't matter, if you're anywhere north of Kentucky here, I question everyone that opts to fly that flag, because somewhere in your bloodline, likely somebody fought against it.
Yeah.
And so they need their own reality check, as far as, who they are and really what they represent in comparison to their own family members. Again, the disdain that I have, and that's echoed and shared by so many, countless others, when it comes to that. And, I've never understood flying the flag of a loser, and Jay, we got to talk to you as well about flying that Cowboys flag that you do.
Really? Seriously? You and Brother Rich, man, y'all on a cowboy trip. My gosh, it's going on a year. Continue. Don't you dare say nothing, Brother Rich.
Ultimately, it's disappointing, and most importantly to everyone listening that is in the state of Ohio, start holding people accountable.
That's what I say too.
That's really, I've said that, time and time again, that it's great that we have people that are willing to speak out. But let's be realistic here. You go and look at all your senators, for the most part, and those that represent this country, and look at their age.
Yeah, I know.
Forget just their race alone at this point.
Yeah.
Not only, as I gave the example earlier about what had taken place with the 6-year-old at the time, in that she's only in her mid-60s. So the people that we have elected to run those roles, were arguably, not only did they exist during that time, but so did the ideology. So this isn't a surprise to me.
Yeah, this should definitely be
why we have to change that old narrative and thought process that, well, if you're in your mid-30s, you're not old enough yet. Almost like head coaching in the NFL. You got to pay your dues. And no, BS.
Yeah.
That's a sign of weakness, because they know they can't compete when it comes to both educationally speaking, because so much has changed, so much access is at our fingertips. Don't trust a person that can't operate an iPad to run a country.
Yeah, I'm with you too. In regards to, we need innovative ideas to move this country forward, I think, but they have to be beneficial. The innovative ideas that would lead to a betterment. You know what I mean? Don't just come up with something new just for the sake of coming up with something new. But if it don't lead to nothing good, then you can keep that. But I'm with you. The old guard, for the most part, and this hypocrisy mindset or ideology, or however you want to put that, it's like concrete. But it's time for the concrete to be broken up. That's for darn sure. Again, the number to call if you want to give us.
And Jay, it's because we as a country, we're conditioned to believe this is the way things are and this is the way that they're going to be, when it's that same group and though their predecessors with that same mindset that got us in this position to begin with. So no, it's time for a complete upheaval, and there's enough
overhaul.
Young folks out there that are completely capable of doing it. Because believe me, I've spent time around enough senators that are fortunately, that I would say qualify as my demographic, so to speak, in age range specifically, that I understand it's not as difficult as folks try to make it out to be.
Of course not.
Told you in the past.
Of course not. No, it's not. Yeah, of course not. That's why I'm not down with all of that tired expression when you get to talking to people about this type of subject or topic. Well, this just the law is the law. What the, excuse my French, but what the hell? What do that mean? That's so generic. I want to know if the law is just or unjust. That's the part we need to be addressing. Because whoever wrote the law, if I don't like you, but I'm the law writer, then you think I'm gonna write the law that's gonna be favorable to you? It's gonna be favorable to what it is that would lend itself to me not liking you. If that makes any sense. The number to call if you're up and around, out and about, and want to give us a shout is area code 267-687-0026. Once again, that number to call is area code 267-687-0026. Okay, let's lean more towards the sports side of all of this and give you a mention of what Baker Mayfield, quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, Brother Richard and Double J's 0-16 Browns, and what J.J. Watt, the Houston Texans, had to say. They both took a stand, and we'll also save it, 0-16. And they'll also, and what we'll also do is mention or give you what Greg Popovich, head coach for the Spurs, what he said. Baker Mayfield says,
Guess what you won't do? Guess what you won't do? You won't be telling us anything that any Cowboy says. We know that.
Oh, that was a good one. Shot across the bow, shots fired. That's why Brother Richard's mic is on mute as of now. All right. Yeah, you're on mute. Baker Mayfield says, I bet you what I won't also be telling you. I won't tell you how many wins the Browns had 2 years ago. I plan on kneeling during the anthem. If I lose fans, that's okay. Barbershop Jay says, no, that's gangster. Because in this day and age, especially with social media, for a guy to be the quarterback of a professional football team and say he don't care if he lose fans, that's a big deal. Because we know it's a quarterback-driven league. We know that. And for him to stick his neck out there, he stuck his neck out there. And then J.J. Watt, in response to some guy who put up a couple of flags and said, I know he'll be taking it. I know he won't be taking a knee. Watt immediately came back. I think it was on Twitter. He said, taking a knee isn't about the flag. If you still think it's about disrespecting the flag or our military, you clearly haven't been listening. Mic drop. Gully, what say you about Mr. Mayfield and Mr. Watts' comments in regards to kneeling?
They clearly are examples of what we needed to see in order to get help in this matter. And what I mean by that is we don't have the problem with being the minority, with the majority existing. We have a problem with the majority subjugating us as beneath. So racism isn't our problem to fix. It's our problem to make known, but it is those that are not in the minority to help to fix. You see, Baker Mayfield and J.J. Watt being white athletes, who are not necessarily subject to the same criticism and ridicule and the same hoops to jump through to get to their career as many Black American athletes. They're actually putting their credit and credibility on the line and fearlessly defending what was trying to be addressed, the racism and the things that Colin Kaepernick wanted to address. I applaud it. There's nothing more I need to say about it. We need help from people who have the position that they have to be able to say, hey, listen, this is what these guys are talking about. Let's get away from distracting again. Let's get away from that straw man again and speak directly to what the issue is, and don't try to hide behind your fandom of me as a white athlete to try to get off something else that was not the issue. That's what J.J. Watt did, and I'm glad that Baker Mayfield, whether I like what he does between the 100 yards of the scrimmage line or not, this here is something that he does in that same field, and I like the fact that he's taking that stand. Ain't nothing more but applause to those guys.
Yeah, I'm in definite total agreement with that. Double J, what say you about Mr. Mayfield and Mr. Watt's comments about kneeling?
Well, ironically, I'm going to salute them. And the reason being is, again, as I stated a little earlier, it's challenging people to understand fully and to dig deeper to the root of what, not only the kneeling represented, because as, look, as clear and obvious as it is to what I would say should be as clear and obvious to everyone, clearly isn't. And for them to spell it out as, both of these gentlemen did, and challenge them to not only say, look, you're not speaking for me. I really applaud them for it, because it's one thing for those that qualify as the minority to speak out about it, despite having large audiences. But it's those that have that qualify
the voices that people listen to.
Majority.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because of that, there needs to be more of this. And this is why we, as I spoke in the last segment about the ownership and specifying who are they afraid of, because, again, they're in control of a billion-dollar franchise. If they're really worried about losing 1% of their rogue fan base from, and let's be truthful, some of their actions actually have suggested that they were willing to sacrifice the majority of the fan base. So I'm not buying that at all. I do believe that there is something worth digging deeper into, which is either you are part of the problem and you support what's been taking place, or B, someone that is a significant contributor to your respective franchises supports what's been taking place. And that is something that needs to be looked into, because otherwise, let's face it, if you're not afraid of if you had the Baker Mayfield approach to life, if you were well off enough and you simply don't care, because let's face it, most that are in that, situation They don't really care what anybody thinks. That's why when you talk about billionaires, they're not wearing Louis Vuitton, et cetera. They're wearing whatever the heck they feel like because they're not worried about the perception of the common man because they know at the end of the day, the bottom line speaks for itself. But that's where if in these circumstances of major conglomerates such as the NFL and NBA are afraid to speak up, we as a fan base and as a society really need to look into why are you afraid to speak up?
Absolutely.
Because that's where you're going to find the root of this problem.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Brother Rich, what do you say about Mr. Mayfield and Mr. Watt comments?
Well, first, let's congratulate them. And let's also recognize that they are of a different generation than the ownership. So when Double J points out the ownership, what we have to recognize is the owners don't represent the players, in that the owners are of a different generation. And let's be quite frank, this is America. Many of those owners, when they talk about that attitude and that disposition of the fan, quote unquote, base that they're trying to protect,
commodity owners,
that's their own disposition.
Yeah,
that's your owner, Mr. Jones. That's his position. Mr. Jones, he says that when on his quote unquote plantation,
seriously,
on his playground, on his field of play, you will kneel. You will not kneel. You will stand for the national anthem. The ownership in Houston said it. This is how they feel themselves. We've come to find out that the majority of them are Trump supporters. So there you have that. When you look at J.J. Watt, when you look at Baker Mayfield, you're looking at a generation of young people who didn't grow up like their parents, like their grandparents. They don't see the world the same way as their parents. They went to school and they have culturally diverse friendships that they like the culture of the African American community. They have Asian friends. They have friends of Hispanic extraction. They have friends from all over the world, and they because that generation is now exposed, they are more apt to speak against because they're now witnessing. Oh, wait a minute! I used to hear about this, but here's the video. I got to say something about this. I got to speak about this.
Yeah.
Because the humanity in me, J.J. Watt, the humanity in me, Baker Mayfield, won't let me know that I have teammates in the trenches with me. I rely on these guys. Football is supposed to be the ultimate team sport. As a teammate, I can't let my teammates' lives be in jeopardy, and I won't speak up for them and then say, I'm with you on the field, but I'm not with you in when it matters in everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a wonderful thing. We ought to celebrate them. We're all waiting to hear when Mr. Jerry Jones and any member of the Cowboys will speak to that. Perhaps you can enlighten us today, brother.
Well, I can't enlighten you what the Cowboys do or don't. I can enlighten you what the Hurricanes say about it. 230 for 30s. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Last but not least for today's program.
Don't stop, get it.
Oh boy, it took old Double J Luke over there. Last but not least, to finish out the program for today. By the way, good stuff, fellas. Minus the Jerry Jones crap. Can I say that on live air? Yeah, I just did. Thank you very much. My man Greg Popovich didn't put it out there. I'm sure you all by now have heard his comments or read his comments in regards to the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell's all of a sudden turning around and, you know, oh, we should have listened to Colin. Oh, yeah, and all of the other blase. He says, and he being, of course, Pop, about the NFL's Roger Goodell, a smart man is running the NFL, and he didn't understand the difference between the flag and what makes the country great. All the people who fought to allow Kaepernick to have the right to kneel for justice. The flag is irrelevant. It's just a symbol that people glom, Glom, onto for political reasons. And for all of you all who out there who might not know what the definition of glom is, that's to become stuck or attached to. Brother Richard, what say you about Pop's comments?
Well, he spoke right into it. But here's the other thing with that. It's interestingly enough, I find the NBA to be just as hypocritical as the NFL, just with a nicer veneer on it. Let's not never forget that the players in the NBA can't kneel for the national anthem either. They must stand under contractual obligation. So if it's about a flag, let's start at home. Let's look in your own backyard.
Gotcha.
Nevertheless, I won't take anything from his comments. His comments were in fact correct, and they point out to the larger issue at hand. That it's convenient for us to point out that the problem here is some guy refuses to kneel for the national refuses to stand for the national anthem. But we won't look at the systemic problems that we started this show talking about. And Popovich is pointing out that we all know they're bigger problems, but it's cowardice that allows us to hide behind the flag and say, no, it's the flag. I'm really protecting the flag. No, you're not protecting the flag. You're protecting your own self-interest. You're protecting your own minuscule belief system that you use to justify your wickedness and your cowardice in the world. That's what we're talking about here.
For sure. Double J, what say you? Dang, Brother Rich, you on fire today. Minus the Dallas Cowboys. You know, I'm not going to even use that word again. What say you, Double J?
Well, look at the facts. The NFL would not, if they truly believe what they're speaking today, they would not have taken Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed to court and pursued it to the fullest extent of the law. Let's start there.
Yeah.
It wasn't in their best interest because of where they were receiving money from, which, again, I encourage people to look into. This is why education is always key and knowledge, because they received money from the United States government when it comes to having military personnel. This is all post 9/11. So look into that and educate yourself, make yourself very familiar that you're just not stand. And again, we're talking about, we're disrespecting an inanimate object.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
The flag have feelings now. Again, we're putting property over people, especially those that have died.
Yeah.
To give these same people an opportunity to express themselves however the hell they may please to do so.
Yeah.
Countless people. You can Google how many people died in that same Civil War, how many people have died during multiple world wars. You know, the travesty that is happening in this country, America would have invaded that particular country under those same circumstances, the same way they did when Nazi Germany was doing this to the Jewish people.
Yeah, no question.
So I cannot believe that there's a debate at this point about right versus wrong when it comes to human rights.
Yeah, but excuse me.
That, yes, in my opinion, these ownership groups are cowards. They either support it because they grew up under those beliefs, and it's a shame because when I look at someone like Martha Ford, who I've met, and Mr. Ford, who is since deceased, if you look at who represents their respective brands that even position them to own said companies, maybe Mr. Jones is different because he did it with commercial real estate, and so some of their circumstances and how they became owners might be differential from one another, but that's regardless of the point.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that too.
The way this country was built comes off of Asians, African Americans, Mexicans, and countless other countries of origin that all were oppressed, that all sought better life for not only themselves but their future generations and refuge in this country.
Yeah, I mean,
including those who originally set sail on those 3 ships because they were being persecuted.
Yeah, that's what
that wants to talk about this flag needs to really take a step back and remember what that same flag represents. If you truly, but go ahead.
No. That's what I'm. When you talking about if you talking about Christopher Columbus, that's what I don't get. You're not from here either. You know what I'm saying? So how do you get to stake the claim as if though you could stand at the top, but everybody else got to be at the bottom of the totem pole? I just don't get that. I don't get that. The same thing that America ran from Britain or wherever, England or whatever was going on at the time, and all the whole that old Boston Tea Party and all that old kind of stuff, and Paul Revere, the British are coming, the British, all that old stuff that fall in line with all of this. Oh, so now you're gonna turn around the
Jay,
thing.
and that's what's so disappointing about this whole conversation.
Yeah, the thing you didn't
is
like that you
could
ran
name the
from,
country
and
the corresponding immigrants.
That's my.
What they were, what led them to America, and truthfully, a lot of people that don't agree, that see it, that oppose to what we're referring to right now, they say, well, if you don't like it, leave. Well, but again, remember, this isn't the 1600s. This isn't the 1500s.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of unoccupied territory here.
Exactly.
In 2020.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the problem. That's the issue I have, and I keep pointing that out to people. You don't even know your own history if you're coming off crazy, talking crazy out the mouth to me. Because again, how is it that you didn't like what Britain was doing or whoever it was over on the other side over there? Now you doing it, and you expect folk not to like it? I just don't understand. I just don't understand the thought process. It's bass backward. It's blind ignorance. And again, miss me with that expression, which is false. Ignorance is bliss. Please, I get what you're trying to, but it's not. It's not. There's nothing blissful about being ignorant, especially when the ignorance is selective and not objective and all that other good stuff. Or willful, should I say? I like that better. Yeah, when the ignorance is willful. But anywho, yeah. Gully, what say you about your boy? And that's a good point, though, Brother Rich. As far as the NBA need to, the folks got to stand and so on and so forth per the contract and all of that. You can't point at the other guys so much, so you got to point at what your folks is doing it too now. You get what I'm saying? So that's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. But Gully, you're a long time Spurs fan. Ever since I can remember when you was a little baby and all that, you had little baby Spurs socks and all that good stuff on. So what say you about Pop's comments? Aside from whether the NBA is doing it or, so on and so forth.
The way he coaches the game of basketball is simple, straightforward, without frills, not terribly verbose, so that way you can get to the point. The flag was a distraction. I've been saying it this whole time, probably to try to bring it to as much of a conclusion as I could. It's a straw man argument, and I'm actually sick of it. The thing about it is, the flag has been flown just as high during Colin Kaepernick's kneeling as it was before it. The flag has not shed a tear. The flag was not knelt on. The flag has not been shot in the back. The flag was not shot playing video games with its niece. None of these things have happened to that flag ever since Colin Kaepernick started kneeling. The flag is just fine. It's representative of these 50 states, and it's been flying just as high, or it's been flying just as low when we've had presidents that have died, and when we've had somber and solemn moments. Those who work and those who defend the flag with their lives in the military continue to do so, and we thank them for their service, and we thank them for their sacrifice, and for making a sacrifice that others aren't willing to make. That being said, the flag was nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick's protest. The flag is protesting was to bring the issue about the issues about the protest to the forefront, to make it so that way you couldn't miss what needed to be addressed. Just like Kyrie and Dwight Howard want to sit out. Again, I'm just rehashing. Just like Kyrie and Dwight Howard want to sit out for the rest of the season, and they stated their reasons why. Colin Kaepernick knelt at the national anthem and stated the reasons why. You refuse to acknowledge it. You refuse to acknowledge on the set that a person has qualified to represent the flag as a proxy, being that military veteran who suggested to him to kneel rather than sit. You don't want to you want to say Colin Kaepernick was disrespectful, but you can't call that guy's name out and say that to his face.
That's what I said.
This argument is finished.
Yeah, I think so
this
too.
Argument is finished.
I think so too.
I don't want to hear anything else about the flag. And if you bring up the flag when we talk about the injustice, talk to me. Bring up numbers that would suggest that maybe the media is over exaggerating the issue of police brutality. Let's talk about that, because at least then, while I can disagree or agree with you, at least then we're talking about the issues.
Yeah.
But you start talking about that flag that's on paper plates and beer cans on the 4th being disrespected when somebody knelt in reverence to it, then we ain't got nothing to talk about.
And that's another thing that get me. The people who got the biggest issue about want to make it out that he was disrespecting the flag in the military. Again, I point out Nate Boyer is a former military person who's the one who planted the seed for him to do it. I mean, you're a grown man. You can do what you want to do. You understand what I'm saying? But Nate Boyer, and nobody's mentioning Nate Boyer and all of this, because if that's the case, you can't mention one without the other. And then two, if you look up the Constitution and go throughout the history, you can go to Wikipedia even. And I know Wikipedia, they'll themselves tell you sometimes sometimes we have to retract some of our information and so on and so forth, because the common folk just add stuff, and that's cool on their part. But even still, you get the gist of it. They're saying the flag is not supposed to be used in any shape, form, or fashion for any entertainment and whatever the purposes, and they do it on a regular basis. They wear hats, they wear shorts, they wear shirts. Like you said, it's on beer cans, it's on seats, the chairs, it's on all of the stuff. They do it with no second thought. And this man told y'all this ain't had nothing to do with that. But people want to make it about that. Why? Because of what I said earlier. Their unapologetic hatred. Well, guess what? You don't really hate me. You hate yourself. And on that note, it's been fun, but we got to run. We appreciate y'all for listening. Don't forget to check us out right here on the Spreaker.com network. You go to the search box and you type in the Shot Report. And then while you're there, please give a subscribe or a subscription, or as my little kids like to say, a prescription. Or you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and give us a follow. And don't forget to subscribe, to our YouTube channel, as well as dropping us your comments, suggestions via email, theshotreport365@gmail.com. And we also have a website up, which, of course, we're continuing to get better at, and it's theshotreport.com. And if that don't work, Google it. For my mans B. Rich, Double J, D. Gully, and all those who follow and support us, we say thank you. And lastly, again, I want to say, don't forget to check out the fine folks over at Rocket Digital. That's ROCKIT digital.net for all your digital service needs. I'm Barbershop Jay, and you've been listening to the Shot Report. And remember, the next time y'all want to know what's really going on, come to the shop. Walk-ins are always welcome. Holla!